much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and you have been one of the lucky ones who's managed to tune into For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, and it's a little hard to be happy on a gray day like this. We got the rain coming down pretty good here, and March, as we said way back at the beginning of the month, came in kind of like a feral house cat, and it's kind of not going out too much like a lamb. It's a little gray and a little wet. Temperature wise, it is pretty mild. In fact, my garden, as I reported last week on spring equinox, we actually planted the peas, and my wife has been very nervous because she thinks we did it too early and it's going to freeze, the peas aren't going to make it. And it's been very interesting because all this week, the weather predictions, like 3 or 4 days out, it's been predicting a frost. It's been predicting below freezing temperatures. And then we get to the day of, and all of a sudden the forecast has changed, and now it's like 38, 40. And that's been the story all week, and it's still the story. I mean, right now, yesterday's prediction was that it was supposed to frost tonight, but today's prediction is it's not going to frost until like Wednesday or Thursday. But we'll see what happens when we get out to Wednesday or Thursday, because the solar energy coming in, as we know, as we say so often on this show, is not balanced right now. There's more energy coming in than going out, and the globe is warming up, and I'm seeing this effect in our garden. And so it's just interesting that the forecast has been so wrong all week, and we'll see what happens for the rest of the month. And I actually have a little bit of data to back all this up. My solar panels put out has so far this month have put out 700 kilowatt hours of power. It's been a very productive month. It's almost as much as they put out last August. So sun-wise, it's been very warm, lots of sun, lots of solar power. And just a quick note on the panels on my house have now, since we turned them on last summer, we just passed 6,000 pounds of CO2 emissions that were saved, that were prevented by having my solar power put electricity onto the grid. So 3 tons of CO2 have been replaced by the solar energy that my household has put out. And those of you who follow the show regularly know that right now I'm currently locked in a battle with the city of Bowling Green over these solar panels, because they want to start a fine. They want to start instituting a penalty for anyone that has solar power installed on their house. They want to charge us $4 every month per installed kilowatt, which means I'd be paying $24 a month as a penalty for having solar panels. And I talked to the city council, and I made a presentation to the city board of utilities that runs, quote unquote, runs the municipal utility company here in Bowling Green. And after my presentation last meeting, they asked me some of the members, I talked to them a little bit after the meeting, and they said, Joe, you should go back and watch the video of the meetings where we approved this. Then you'll understand why we did this. And so I did. So I've spent the past 2 weeks watching hours of utility board meetings, and I have to say that what I saw was a textbook example of what those of us in the environmental community call a regulatory capture. And what that means is that happens when an organization which is supposed to oversee an industry or regulate some activity instead gets taken over by that industry or by the people doing that activity. And so instead of regulating, they pretty much just become rubber stamps. They pretty much do whatever that thing they're supposed to be regulating wants. And it's a natural enough thing to happen because we humans we're kind of geared towards being members of a group or a tribe. And if you're supposed to be regulating some industry, you deal with the people in that industry every day. They're the ones you talk to regularly. They're the ones that come to all the meetings. They're the ones that you wade through hours of boring details. And doing that kind of thing can create sort of a personal bond. It can create kind of a culture. When you're sitting across from somebody day after day, hour after hour, the tendency is you want to kind of get on good terms with that person. You want to make a community with them. And that is what I see happening with the Bowling Green Board of Utilities. Theoretically, they're supposed to oversee our municipal utility, but typically what happens is that the director of the municipal utilities comes and just tells them what to do and, writes up all their motions for them and just says, okay, we want this. And then they say, okay, you can have it, which makes for very pleasant, cooperative kind of meetings, but it's not really doing the thing that the board is supposed to do. And the board is supposed to represent the interests of the larger community. And so I'm going to go back this week. I'm going to go back on Monday because that's when their next meeting is. And I'm going to talk to them about it again. And I would like to ask people to call in because this is a call-in show at 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. And just tell me what you think of Bowling Green's plans to penalize solar panels every month. Because what I'd like to be able to go back to the utility board and say is that I put this to my listeners and they called it and they didn't like it. Because I think all of us like to have the possibility of putting solar panels on a roof, especially now that the cost of solar has dropped so much that you can actually make a moderate little bit of income off of your roof, off of the solar panels. And this is the time that we've been hoping for, that the environmentalists have been hoping for and predicting would come, the time where solar is actually so inexpensive that people can make a profit just by putting it on their roofs, and but not if utilities institute these fees and penalties for having solar. So if you'd like, call in any time in the next hour at 866-240-1065. We have a great show lined up for you here for the next hour or so till 9 o'clock. We have a guest. We have at 8:15 or so, we're going to start listening to Valarie Middleton. And she is the head of an organization called Keep Wayne Wild, because they just had a quote-unquote victory in the courts. But as we're going to talk about, this is one of those quote-unquote victories, which is also a loss at the same time. But there was plans to do massive amounts of fracking in the national forest, and a judge has come down and limited the amount. Okay, they didn't stop the planned fracking that's going to go in, but they did say, okay, that's enough, no more. And we'll get more details about that when we talk to Valarie at 8:15. Then, of course, we'll hear, as always, from our wonderful sponsors and fantastic patrons. And Rebecca, I believe Rebecca is on the line with us. Rebecca, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, welcome aboard. And I understand you'll be talking a little bit about some basketball ecologists or basketball environmentalists. Yep. So, yeah, appropriate for our sports station here, 106.5 The Ticket.
So it's March Madness. March Madness, Joe.
Yeah, March Madness, exactly. And so then Eco News, we got a lot of environmental stories, important and interesting environmental stories to cover. And, of course, as I said, hopefully we'll hear from you at 866-240-1065. We're going to be going to our interview with Valarie shortly, but as soon as that's done, you can join us and let me know, what do you think about Bowling Green's plan to fine solar panels $4 per installed kilowatt hour every month forever? Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is a bad idea? Let me know. 866-240-1065. So, how are you doing, Rebecca?
Oh, okay. How about yourself? I think the seasonal changes are kind of knocking me on my butt here. I'm having a sinus thing, but probably I will survive.
I definitely hope so, because, the show's much easier with a co-host, I have to tell you. I really appreciate having somebody else there. So, all right. Well, I think, Russell, we're all set. Let's go to the interview. And while he's pulling that up, I'll just remind everybody that if you had anything you wanted to text us or talk to us about, you can text or call anytime, 419-973-5841. And, of course, you can email anytime at joe@joedemar4agreenfuture.org. That's DEMARE Green Future. So joe@joedemar4agreenfuture.org. And are we set, Russell? Do we have the interview going? Okay. Hi, and welcome to For a Green Future. If you could just start with your name and your position in your organization.
I am Valarie Middleton, and I am a co-founder of Keep Wayne Wild. We're a small environmental conservation organization defending Ohio Appalachian communities by protecting Ohio's only national forest.
The Wayne National Forest. So
Correct.
Is Keep Wayne Wild, is that like a group of individuals, or are you a coalition of organizations, or how would you describe your group?
I would describe us as a group of individuals, but we do work among a coalition of other organizations. We're not the only group protecting the Wayne, but there are many other groups working tirelessly on protecting our only national forest as well.
Okay, great. Now, up here in Northwest Ohio, not everybody's familiar with the Wayne National Forest. Could you give us a little background on it? Like, how big is it? What kind of plants and animals live there, and so forth?
Yes, it's described as rolling Appalachian foothills. It's comprised of 3 separate units. It's not one whole large unit like other national forests. And this is due to private land ownership. So there's a Ironton unit in Lawrence County, Ohio, Athens unit in Athens County, and a Marietta unit in Washington County. And Wayne is actually approximately 240 acres.
Okay. So, but 240 acres total, or just for that one section?
Oh, I'm sorry, 240,000 acres.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bigger than 240 acres. Okay, 240, almost 250,000 acres. All right, go ahead.
And we have approximately 120 different species of trees, 45 species of animals, 158 species of birds, 28 species of reptiles, approximately 29 species of amphibians, and about 87 species of fish that are in the forest.
Wow, that's some diversity there. So,
Yes.
So I could understand why you'd want to protect that. And recently you had a great victory in protecting the forest. Could you tell us about that?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
In 2017, conservation groups sued BLM and the USFS over the plans to permit fracking in the Wayne, and also ignoring significant environmental threats before approving the fracking. There was a ruling last year claiming the BLM and the USFS failed to do a proper environmental impact assessment, and that they failed to consider threats to endangered species, which I can speak more about here in a minute, public health, and the most important, the watershed. They did this or didn't do this before the auction of more than 40,000 acres for fracking. And the recent court ruling, the judge blocked new leases, prohibited new drilling permits and surface disturbance on existing leases, and prohibits water withdrawal from the Little Muskingum River for already approved drilling.
Uh-huh.
So
now you said
a big victory.
All right. Well, that's a good, that's a nice solid win there. And you said you could talk a little bit more about endangered species that are in the forest.
Yes, the Wayne is home to federally threatened and endangered species like the Indiana bat, the northern long-eared bat, the northern Bering beetle, and the eastern hellbender, which is the largest salamander native to North America. There's black bears and bobcats also reside in the Wayne, as well as the eastern the timber rattlesnake. There's also threatened and endangered species of mussel, such as fan shell, ray bean, snuffbox, and pink bucket pearly mussels, which are threatened by reduction of the water quality through sediment pollution. So we have a lot of species that we're trying to protect in the Wayne.
Yeah, and a lot of very environmentally sensitive. I know the Hellbender Salamander, which is just this wild creature, if you ever see it, it's a huge salamander. They're very sensitive to any kind of pollution, like fracking fluids or anything in their environment, because their skin is so absorbs pretty much everything that's around them. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So was this battle just in the courts, or were there other fronts where folks were fighting to protect the forest?
Right now, it's through the courts, but there have been other camps and active action camps that held, but everything right now is, and I'm hoping it will stay this way, but is in the court systems. Okay,
so this victory was essentially kind of maintaining the status quo. That is, the judge is preventing more of the forest from being destroyed, but it sounds like he didn't actually void the already existing fracking contracts. But going forward, if you could have whatever you want, how could the Wayne be made even more wild? And that is, not losing a chunk of the forest is wonderful, but what would gaining new ground look like?
I think that having any of the gas and oil industry removed, any and all of the gas and oil industry removed and not allowed in our national forests, because the national forests were created to preserve natural habitat, conserve the disappearing landscape, and I think that will definitely make the Wayne more wild. And I'm hoping that I could have anything I wanted, I would hope that companies will properly remove their heavy equipment, their derricks, their rusty infrastructure. And I'm hoping that they'll be charged for the environmental damages they've caused, and any affected citizens will be compensated, and that they could replant all the trees, the thousands of trees that they've cut down already. And when I don't trip over the pipelines or smell methane leaking from a tank on a hike, and there's drinkable water, I will know that the Wayne is definitely more wild.
So even with the fracking that's going on there now, even with the damage that is being caused, there's still a lot of the forest that is still what I guess you'd call pristine or still wild. Have you had any personal experiences in the Wayne Forest that sort of helped cement your resolve to protect it?
Yeah, we go out camping at least once a season, and we try to, pick different areas that are touched and untouched, just to have different, to see what's going on there. But there's definitely a lot of the forest that is very beautiful, and I recommend everyone taking a trip out and taking a look and getting more involved.
Right. So if people want more information about your group, how can they keep up with what you're doing?
Well, we are on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram. We have a website, all under Keep Wayne Wild. The website is keepwaynewild.com. And we also have an email at keepwaynewild@gmail.com. Like I said, at least once a season, we'll do camping or hiking, depending on the weather. We'll do a BioBlitz, and a BioBlitz is a period of biological surveying and an attempt to record all living species within a designated area. So we're trying to document all the plants, animals, insects that we see, and get them a scientific grade, research level. But it's a group of anyone from scientists to naturalists, volunteers. They conduct an intensive field study over a continuous period, and we usually take a weekend and set up tents and have a good time.
It does sound like a good time. And one of my life goals is to see a bear in the wild from a distance. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I did see one in Alaska and at the Denali I was in a tourist bus there, but I'd like to see one down here too. They're really amazing animals. So I don't know, maybe this year I could get out there and join you guys. But it sounds like you're probably not planning the date firm yet until maybe COVID's over.
Yeah, right now we're keeping a small group. We don't want to cause any problems with what's going on with COVID, and we can never predict how many people are going to show up. So we're just keeping small groups for now. But if anybody wants to get involved, definitely email or get in touch with us, and we can give you some information.
All right. So is there anything you'd like to add?
I think that if people just understand that fracking has a far greater impact, requiring clear cutting of large areas of land for the construction of well pads and the millions of gallons of water. I think that's the biggest, one of the bigger problems with fracking is the amount of water that is taken, and then it'll become contaminated during the process and then transported in trucks and injection wells. So any accidents can be catastrophic for not only workers but nearby residents. And fracking and wastewater disposal have been linked to earthquakes in southeast Ohio as well. So fracking is kind of a complex process, and I think the more people learn about what it takes or what will happen when fracking moves into the area. Our hope is to get more locals involved and educate them on the consequences of the environmental consequences of what it will happen when the gas and oil industry moves into our only national forest.
In the state of Ohio.
In the state of Ohio, yes.
Yeah. And the economic benefit that they always predict for fracking, as I understand it, the studies have been showing that the counties, the southern counties in Ohio that have gone big for fracking actually net the job, that the benefits didn't really materialize because there was a lot of environmental damage and they didn't hire that many people and it's really not the economic boon for an area that they promised it would be.
Right. There's always that promise of a lot of jobs, and a lot of the jobs are filled by people that don't even live in Ohio, and so it's definitely not true to what is claimed about job production at all. Yeah.
All right. Well, Valerie, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on this court victory, and hopefully there'll be many more, and you will get to see the Wayne completely wild someday without a single fracking pad or well drilling technology stuck on there. That'd be great.
Yeah, it would. And like I said, it will take everyone to keep Wayne wild.
Okay. Thanks very much. And yeah, thank you folks for listening. Yeah, the Wayne National Forest is sort of a hidden Ohio gem. I mean, people don't normally think national forest when they're thinking about Ohio, but as you heard, it's almost 250,000 acres, and I've only been there once personally, but it was a really beautiful hike, and I remember it distinctly. So yeah, a hidden gem that was threatened by fracking and will be damaged by the approved fracking, but at least with this court victory, there's going to be a limit. But there is no limit to our gratitude towards the generosity and faithfulness of our advertisers and patrons. And so we want to take a minute here to thank the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's several ways to get a hold of them to find out what they're doing, in case you're curious. The numbers to call are 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. They have a website, wcparks.org. And, of course, you can always download their nifty app. Go to any app store and search for WC Parks. And then they're also on social media, Twitter, and so forth. And they have some special Earth Day things that they're doing this time around. They've got some programs to encourage people to do some Earth Day activities. And so check them out, because we're about to come up on April, which, of course, April 22nd is Earth Day. So check out the Wood County Park District. And we are also boundlessly grateful to our patrons. These are wonderful people who every month they've signed up to have a little tiny bit come out of their checking account and come over to ours. And that's what helps keep this show on the air. So if you want to become a patron, what you would do is go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. Search for A Green Future, and you'll see our attractive pages that we've got put up there. And then just pick a level of membership, whatever fits your budget. And every month, as I say, a little bit comes out from your account, comes over to our account. And as you can hear, we put it to good use. I can faithfully say that every single dollar that goes in from our patrons gets put toward producing the show. And so you get to hear the result. And if you're a patron, then you get to listen to the show and you get to say to yourself, I helped create that. So we really appreciate our patrons. As I said at the beginning, we're looking for phone calls today, 866-240-1065. Specifically, what do you think about Bowling Green's plan to fine and penalize solar power? 866-240-1065. And Rebecca, we certainly appreciate your contribution. Hi.
Thank you.
So you pointed out March. We're in the midst of March Madness here, and so you decided to sort of link basketball and the environment. How did you do?
Well, okay. There's some stuff. Now, some of this, either comes primarily or secondarily from NBA propaganda. So a lot of the material that I ran across was sort of nice and positive and on the vague side of what I think they're doing. But, it's good as far as it goes. Generally speaking, the NBA has some green initiatives going on. Their court in Spain, they made a basketball court out of recycled glass, which is nice. They have now these, in Senegal, they have this sort of learning center academy where, the kids go to school and get, NBA level coaching for basketball, which has an eco-friendly structure. You'll like this. They're partnering with the National Resource Defense Council to reduce their carbon footprint. So, nobody knows exactly what that means. They didn't say. At All-Star Week in New Orleans, they had a couple of good events. They had an event promoting cell phone and electronic recycling to try and make that easy for the fans. They had little, stations with bicycle-powered cell phone charging stations at that. They're also partnering with the NRDC to offset their CO2 emissions. So, I don't know. You could just make less to begin with, but instead they make a bunch and then do things to offset that, I guess. They have low-flow toilets in their new Brooklyn arena. The Houston Rockets got an LEED certified stadium, and also Portland and Miami and Atlanta. And so, not understanding what the heck that meant, I looked up LEED, and it's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So in order to get like a silver or gold certification, you have to be careful about energy use, water use, indoor environmental quality, material selection, building, and the building's effects on its site. That's what that means. And again, I'm sort of short on specifics for that. They held an NBA Green Week, which had eco-friendly uniforms and tree plantings, and also a recycling drive. So that was nice. Also, a lot of several of their minor league teams, including the Santa Cruz Warriors, they got a green business certification for their stadium. And they're granting free season tickets to any homeowners who go solar, who install solar panels.
Oh, really? Whoa.
Yeah, that's
nice.
Pretty cool, huh?
I like that idea.
Yeah, but okay, one of the individual players, I understand they're all required to do some community service, but Steve Nash in particular, he's played for the Phoenix Suns, Dallas Mavericks, LA Lakers. He really kind of made, the environment his personal thing. He's a 7-time NBA All-Star, 2-time MVP. He's Canadian, and so he was part of the British Columbia sort of a spokesperson, BC Hydro's Team Power Smart effort to reduce electrical usage. He's been a spokesperson for renewable energy in Arizona, and he personally got the Suns to install solar panels at the arena. And also he has something called the Steve Nash Foundation to improve which works to improve the health and the education and environment of underserved children.
Huh. Well, that's nice.
So, yeah, if you really, like basketball and greens, Steve Nash is your guy. There's a film out about his efforts in that department, I think.
Steve Nash. Gee, I wonder if we might be able to get a grant from that. From that.
Heck yeah! Let's go for it.
Yeah, I think I'll research that. In one of my previous incarnations, I was a grant writer, so I actually know how to do that.
I've reached an audience of Joe.
Well, I think that one good thing about your report there is that the NBA does actually care about the environment. So I think that's a really good thing.
And, they're a really huge business. So, if they do make small changes, it makes more of an impact because, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people, coming to games and things.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that report, Rebecca. And, it's nice to be able, I always like to be able to tie sports to what we're doing, since this is a sports station here at 106.5 The Ticket. We have a text. Someone has texted us, and a very nice text says they pointed out that Wood County was way ahead of the curve installing wind turbines before anybody else, and installing our solar power, the municipal solar field a few years ago, which is very true. I mean, PG used to be ahead of the curve, but then they say it's rather baffling that we've changed the direction here. And this person says he personally powers the lights in his livestock barn with solar on a small scale. And then he finishes by saying, "I would be absolutely livid if I was in your shoes." Which,
and the thing is, Wood County, one of my major memories of having lived there during junior high and high school, is that it is windy as all get out. It's not so much, there's not a lot of snow, but what there is tends to come in sideways quite a bit.
Yeah, we have
I walked to and from school a lot, and it was, I didn't like the buses, so I do an hour from my house in Bowling Green to the high school. And, that was mostly going home. I did a ride going there. But, yeah, so much windburn.
Yeah. No, our wind turbines here are 4 turbines that provide about 2% of the power that the city needs. They have generated way above what they were projected to when they were installed, based just on wind studies. So we have even more wind than the official numbers suggest we've got. And
also wet feet, because it's right in the heart of the Great Black Swamp. So your feet are in Bowling Green. Your feet are wet and cold, and you got windburn. That's your 2 major problems. Well, yeah, but it's still, I love it. It's still a great place, and it would be nice if there was more of the Black Swamp around. But the aggressive drainage is pretty much taking care of that. There's just a few tiny little shadows of the Great Black Swamp and drainage ditches with some cattails and things, but go on an hour-long walk through the city. It will not seem so drained to you. In fact, they showed us a movie in high school. I remember that it was aerial shots of Bowling Green from the air during the spring flood season, and really it just looked like one giant puddle. You're on the ground and you're hopping between puddles and trying to avoid it. So, it doesn't look like that. But if you see it from the air, it still pretty much looks like a swamp.
Well, yeah. So if we ever stop draining it, it would quickly go back to being a swamp. So, yeah, that's true. So thanks. I wanted to say thanks very much to the kind listener who sent that apropos text. I'm going to definitely use that when I talk to the City Council next, or to the Citizens Utility Board next time, and hopefully we'll get them to actually do something. And as to lividness, well, I'm afraid I have to. A long time ago, I've had to, as an environmentalist, I've had to sort of give up lividness. I had to sort of give up anger, because anger is very difficult to maintain. And if you keep your activism based on anger, it's hard to do it for 20 or 30 or 40 years, because usually you end up with high blood pressure.
Your blood pressure will suffer at that point. You'll do more damage to yourself than them.
Right. So I'm not livid about it, but I am determined to change it. That's what I say. I'm not motivated by anger. I'm motivated by determination. So next round, I'll let you folks know what happens in the next go around with my battle with the utility board here. All right, it's time to move on now to ecological news. And got some interesting news here. What a difference a word makes. Because the European Union is right now having the battle over a definition of a word. It's called it's a very bureaucratic thing, actually. It's called the nomenclature decision, which is basically for all the regulations of the European Union, they have to define what all the words mean. And one of the words that they're trying to define here, or a phrase, is clean energy. So, and what this affects is how they distribute their grants, which forms of energy get preferential loans and regulatory treatment. And the battle is over the question of, is nuclear power clean energy? And as we know, as regular listeners know, the answer to that question is no. Nuclear power is not clean energy by any definition. But
it's clean energy in the sense of being very, very dirty.
Yeah, whatever kind of sense that makes, which is not much. But one interesting little side note about this is that there's the Brexit, Britain leaving the European Union, it looks like is going to have a big impact on this debate, because they were always the most rabidly pro-nuclear out of all the EU countries. They were the ones who would always, when this conversation came up, they'd be like, of course nukes are clean. Who cares about that radioactive stuff? That's you can't see it or smell it or taste it. So, but they're gone now. And so now the only pro-nuclear, or the biggest pro-nuclear country left, is France. And France has been having some real doubts about nuclear, because it turns out that their standardized reactor design, which was their big thing, is that here in the U.S., every reactor is different, because as we were building them, we would find mistakes, and we would find safety problems, and we would find things that didn't work. So we would take those lessons and apply them to the next reactor. And so they kept finding mistakes and basic design flaws. And so literally every single U.S. reactor is different. And the pro-nuclear people say that's the problem with nuclear power, is that if we just had a standard reactor design, it would be much cheaper and safer and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what France did with their standard reactor designs. And now what they've discovered is that they have a standard tritium leak in all their reactors, which is quickly contaminating French groundwater, which the French, who love making wine and things like that require water, are very upset about it. So France is actually backing off from nuclear, and so it looks like maybe this year they will define clean energy as not including nuclear, and that would be a great boon for wind and solar, and it would help the world on their way to getting truly clean energy. So,
well, you messed with their wine. This stuff has gotten real now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Mess with the French's wine. Oh man, there are now some people who are rabidly anti-nuclear over there who will never get convinced, because now every time they drink their wine, they have to think, is there tritium in this? Oh boy. HB6, another HB6 update. We reported last
more.
The never-ending HB6 update. We reported last week that the legislature was considering repealing just the fee that was going to be added to everyone's electric bills, and they've done that. Both the House and the Senate in Ohio
finally
have passed. Have passed what's called HB 128, and literally that's all it does, is it removes the subsidy for Davis-Besse and Perry nuclear plants from that fee. Now, they left everything else about House Bill 6 intact, and the biggest disappointment, of course, for this is that First Energy and Energy Harbor were always saying, if we don't get these subsidies, we're going to close the plants. Well, it turns out that's another lie.
Please don't throw us in that briar patch.
Right. But it turns out that's another lie, because now they're not going to get the subsidies. And actually, the reason that this bill passed And the reason that it was sponsored by Bill Seitz, who was one of the most rabidly foaming at the mouth pro-nuclear people, is that Energy Harbor now doesn't actually want the subsidy. And that's because because federal regulations have changed, and now the federal government actually penalizes utility companies that get state bailouts like this one. And so it actually costs Energy Harbor more money to get the subsidy than they would get just taking the cash out of our pockets. And so that's why the Republicans wanted to pass that, because once again, they're doing Energy Harbor's bidding. And, as I said, both houses have passed it. The governor has yet to sign it, which is interesting because usually he does, historically, he's done whatever First Energy wanted him to do, like lickety-split, because they've given him $1 million in campaign contributions, and there's so many reasons. I guess this time he doesn't want to. Yeah,
they call it wine with the wine because you need something to get through it.
Yeah, I think maybe he doesn't want to appear too eager this time. He signed House Bill 6 within literally minutes of it passing the Senate, but now he's like, oh no, I don't have to do what Energy Harbor says. I don't have to jump when they say it. So he's waiting like a week or so, I guess, before he signs it.
Right.
But now there will still be charges appearing on our bills, and those remaining charges are going to be going to the 2 coal plants down there on the Ohio River, and a couple of solar plants, a couple municipal solar fields, including Bowling Greens, actually, that had been grandfathered in to the old renewable energy subsidy program that they eliminated with House Bill 6. And so all the other bad stuff about House Bill 6 remains. They've still, got rid of our energy efficiency and our alternative energy programs. And as I said, subsidies are still going to the coal plants. But at least the biggest and the worst part of the bill has been plucked out at the request of the company that was supposed to benefit from it. But it's worth noting. So instead of an 85-cent charge, now there'll be a 10-cent charge appearing on our bills for the coal plants and the remaining solar.
Interesting story, Joe.
What?
My friend Tim had a big fight with his ex-girlfriend this month because she insisted that the reason she had an $85 charge on her electric bill was because he left a light on overnight when he was there once.
Oh,
pretty sure that's not true. I think it was actually nuclear energy, not Tim leaving one light on. If he did it every day, maybe but yeah, no.
No, if she had one of those arc lamps, the ones that just do a spark between 2 electrodes.
Right.
If they had that,
maybe,
that might have cost $85 for a night. But otherwise, a regular an LED bulb overnight, we're talking about probably about 3 cents. That's probably about 3 cents worth of electricity. So
we can exonerate Tim on that point.
Yes, you could tell Tim definitely wasn't you.
he kind of suspected that was not his fault.
Yeah. All right. On to another headline. This is an example of, I've been noticing this a lot lately, that the headlines have been spinning environmental losses, as victories. And here's one. Biden withdraws key permit for a refinery on St. Croix. St. Croix is one of the Virgin Islands. It's southeast of Haiti and Dominican Republic, which are southeast of Cuba. Really beautiful area. That's one of the places cruise ships always go. And the Trump administration, in its last couple months, in fact, in December of 2020, pushed through the approval of a refinery on St. Croix. It was an old refinery that had been shut down because of environmental reasons, because basically they're poisoning everybody on St. Croix. But the the Trump administration pushed it through, and it started up again. And now the Biden administration has withdrawn the EPA permit to proceed. Now, the reason I'm calling this spin of a loss is because this doesn't mean they have to stop. It doesn't shut down the refinery. They get to keep going. They just get to keep going without an EPA permit now. But according to the study, now to the story, now they have to talk with the EPA and negotiate with the EPA, and maybe they'll be required to install some pollution control equipment, or maybe not. So withdrawing the permit is a nice gesture. It's saying, oh, we don't approve of this, but practically speaking, there's no change in policy until the negotiations are done, and that those of us at the environmental movement know that that process can actually take years before you see any actual improvement. So the refinery started back up in December, and it gets to keep going. But Biden has withdrawn a permit, which is at least a gesture. So we'll see what happens.
Righty then.
Yeah. Next, environmental news. Record high temperatures in Russia. In fact, in 2020, Russia's temperature was 5.8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. As we reported all through last year, that resulted in the taiga forest burning and the tundra just burning directly. And, the more far north you are, the bigger your impact in terms of global warming, because global warming is not happening evenly across the globe. And in fact, there's a few places that are actually cooling as a result of global warming, which is, why they say climate change. But I still call it global warming because the globe as a whole is warming. And one of the signs that this is happening in Russia is that their northern sea route was clear of ice for a record amount of time in 2020. And so and ironically, of course, one of the main things that Russia uses its northern sea route is to transport oil and gas that have come from the Russian oil fields. So, so that's another little example of that whole positive feedback loop. The warming northern ocean allows Russia to put more carbon into the globe because it lets them ship their super tankers in the middle, much longer, much more of the year than they're usually able to. Okay. All right. So now another story from physics.org, phys.org on there. There was a story that came out March 26th. And this is one of those basic ecological story that environmentalists and ecologists know this, but apparently we've got to continuously reprove all these things that are fundamental environmental principles. And there's been a study done that shows that if you there's a lot of push to plant trees now. A lot of companies and a lot of countries are saying the solution to global warming is planting trees. Well, this study shows that if you just plant a monoculture of trees, that is, you just, create 1 million seedlings from the same couple of trees, you just grab all their seeds and essentially do a monoculture, that forest that you plant there artificially is very likely to fail. And we've talked about the problems with monocultures before, that they're all, if everybody's genetically related, then they're all susceptible to the same diseases and insects and so forth. But it also turns out that if you plant closely related trees, they don't like to breed with each other. They don't like to fertilize each other.
Sensibly enough.
It's kind of like the whole. It's almost as if they were siblings. They don't want to reproduce with another tree that's very closely related to them, and so reproductive capacity goes down, and the forest that you plant, the monoculture that you plant, doesn't reproduce itself, doesn't create enough seedlings to maintain itself, and so the whole thing can die off all at once. And so so right now, that one of the standard things to plant also is eucalyptus trees because they grow very quickly. But as we've
mentioned before, incredibly flammable.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Flammable trees. So some of these reforestation projects are essentially planting fire bombs.
Oh boy!
By the millions.
Useful.
Right. And so the authors of the study said the right way to do this, of course, is to get lots of different seedlings from lots of different trees and many different species. In other words, try to recreate the kind of diversity you have in an actual wild forest. And once again, that turns out to be the most efficient. It's not just beautiful the way you go into a wild forest and you see all different kinds of trees. Some are green and some are evergreen, and not just beautiful, it also once again turns out to be the most practical. And that's a lesson we learn over and over again in ecology, is that the wilderness, that the wild, that nature on its own, through billions of years of evolution, has actually figured out the best way to do most things. And so we mainly just have to either copy nature or get out of nature's way. And so that's, and then we'll be on our way to a green future. So that's it for this week. Thank you all for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
Run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed